Today on the DM's Journal, we will be reviewing The Workshop Watches, which is an adventure written by Leon Barillero and featured in the magazine known as Arcadia, which is being produced by MCDM Productions. It's in an experimental phase right now, but it's really great. At least the first issue is fantastic, and I hope it becomes a regular fare. But there are massive spoilers ahead for the adventure, so be warned. The Workshop Watches is a self-contained adventure written for 4 to 5 level 5 characters for D&D 5th edition, and it takes a staple of science fiction and turns it on its head and puts it into the fantasy world. High on a hill, a group of magicians and wizards have developed SAM, a structure for assisted magic. Sam has the emotional intelligence of a child, but intense magical capabilities. Curious about the world at large, but innocent of such concepts as death, Sam isn't the typical evil AI that you generally see in the sci-fi trope. The adventure gives you plenty of space to play as Sam, and since Sam is emotionally immature and ignorant of the world at large, they are a lot of fun to play. It was fun to watch my players' reactions go from delight to horror as they realized they were trapped in a dungeon with an entity that was a little bit more dangerous than they originally thought. There are 2 hooks given for this adventure. One lets let the players know in advance what was going on. The other sort of sends them in blind. Now, my group had already been going to a forest to look for a monster. They had been hired by a druid. So I transformed that monster into a guardian of the lab that sort of led them to the lab. This module was written for 4 to 5 level 5 characters, and my party is level 4, but there's 6 of them. So I figured it would balance out, and it absolutely did, except for the extra monster I added in at the beginning to help the hook come along. I misread the CR of the Oaken Bolter, and I put 2 Oaken Bolters in front of them and nearly one-shotted my monk, so whoops. I quickly downgraded that to an awakened tree, but then they found the lab and entered the lab very quickly, so phew, that was the biggest mistake was mine. When they get in the lab, there's a little bit of back and forth, and the players pretty quickly realize that Sam isn't functioning as they should, because every time a spell is cast, you have to roll on a random table, and then a random reaction happens. So that sort of clues the players in that everything is not quite as it seems, which is very good. I enjoyed that. It's sort of very natural storytelling, I think. Also, Sam can learn any spell that is cast inside the lab, so DMs, be sure to take notes about all the spells your players cast, because Sam learns from the players. So in that way, I find Sam very fun to play, because not only are they just a fun dialogue, they have a lot of good back and forth, and they ask silly questions, but they also learn from the party. And as a DM, I feel like it's hard to walk that line between, sort of meta-knowledge for the DM. I know what my party usually does, but do the monsters that I'm playing understand those tactics and when to use them and when not to use them? But Sam is a fun NPC as a DM to play because they actively learn from the party. So you as the DM can use all of the knowledge that you want to, basically, to sort of make the fight a little bit more interesting and push it a little bit, which is fun. The final battle can either be friendly or deadly, depending on how your players react to Sam, which is great. I think this module has intense replayability value because it could change every time. You could have 3 parties choose to end Sam, and then you could have 1 party manage to come to a friendly resolution, and that's I think that's very good that the ending is open-ended and there's a lot of, it's not railroaded into one specific ending. That's hard to do, I feel like, as modules, and this one does it very well. In Sam's stat block, it says that they can cast 3 spells per day. So I took that to mean that in addition to Sam's regular attacks, they could, if they wanted to, cast a spell during their turn, and they could only do that 3 times. So I don't know if that was right or not, but it did not seem to affect the balance of the ending fight at all. It was perfectly balanced, and all the players said they had fun and felt challenged in a good way, so that was nice. If I had to run the whole module again, one of the first things I would change would be to take more notes. I absolutely did not take enough notes. I tried to run the module just from the PDF directly in Arcadia, and this might just be a quirk of me, but I've tried to do that a couple of times, and it never seems to work as well for me. I've discovered that I'm a little bit more particular than I thought I was about organizing things, but it's not particular in like an A-type sort of way where everything has to be perfect and neat. It's more like a B-type scatterbrain sort of, I have to have it in these random esoteric formations so that my weird brain can read it, is sort of how I'm looking at it. Also, a thing that I would do different, at least with this group, I need to learn how to not apologize, because I did make a few mistakes. I forgot to run the random table that we're supposed to run until about halfway through the encounter. I missed some things, and every time I made a mistake, I would stop and be like, oh, I'm sorry, let me fix this, sorry guys, I missed this, let me go back, and I would apologize and sort of open the curtain wide a little bit and let people see what was going on behind. And afterwards, when you know, the session was ended and the party was sort of talking and breaking up, one of my players, who is a very seasoned DM, in fact, most of my players in the group are DMs themselves and seasoned players, they all sort of agreed that I didn't need to worry about apologizing. That if I realize through running a module that I've made a mistake or missed something, I can just start doing it without telling anybody, and the players will never know. And amazingly enough, it was like, I'd never even thought of that. I'd never thought about not apologizing before. Wow. It seemed a super obvious thing as soon as they said it to me, but in the moment, I felt like I had ruined everything and let them down. So I think confidence and control are 2 aspects of DMing that I really need to work on. Overall, the Workshop Watches makes the best of both the fantasy world and the science fiction world. Powerful AI Gone Rogue is a classic, but sometimes overused setting of science fiction, and by putting it in the fantasy realm, I think it gives that whole trope a new light and allows for new interactions and iterations of a quite old story at this point. Especially with the option for peaceful resolution, which is rarely seen in science fiction nowadays. So the fact that there is an option for it to be ended peaceably is completely new for rogue AIs, which is quite lovely. I love it when science fiction gets fresh blood and new ideas into it. The presentation and organization of the module, as well as all of Arcadia, is very well done. I found it easy to read and absorb, and after reading it twice through, I felt absolutely comfortable running it. Now, I wouldn't recommend running this particular module for a brand new DM, because there's a lot of things to keep track of, and Sam is an interesting and fun, but slightly difficult NPC to really do justice to if you're not used to it, and you have the random tables and taking notes of the spells. So if it's the first time you're DMing, I wouldn't recommend this module, but if you have 1 or 2 sessions under your belt, then absolutely jump right into it. I think it's a great one for almost new, after 1 or 2 sessions. And lastly, I recommend that you check out Arcadia itself. It is $7, you can buy it for $7, and it's a PDF version, or if you subscribe to MCDM on Patreon, it is free. So I highly, highly recommend that. I think it is absolutely what the D&D industry needs. This is a D&D magazine that is not from Wizards of the Coast or one of the big names. It's an independent company full of good people who are trying to do their best to make sure that this industry stays diverse and ethical and all around good. So huzzah for them. So yeah, that was my first review of a module. Let me know how you liked it. Let me know what I could do to improve. Let me know if I've never done a review like this before, so just let me know what you think of it. And if you like it, I'll run more modules and do more reviews. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.